What's going on, everybody? This is Fred from 2 Credits Needed coming at you with our first freestyle video. This one's going to be our E3 wrap-up and, I guess, review. I'm not really going to review everything. Just talk about a couple of games, talk about the main showcases, and what I thought of all of it. So let's get started. For those of you that don't know, E3 is the yearly video game conference where the major video game companies come together, kind of show what they have coming for the next year, a couple of teases for things farther off in the future, just to build some hype up for their major games, their big games, and show off what they're working on. Overall, this year's E3 was pretty good. There were some things that were definitely weird. I think COVID's messed a lot of that up. No crowds, no people in person. That all makes things a little wonky when it's just a bunch of guys and girls talking to the camera. But overall, I think the impression of E3, I think, is kind of dying. It's maybe not dying, but it's definitely changing. It's not the same as it used to be. It feels watered down. A lot of these companies do their own shows throughout the year. There's other video game conferences throughout the year. So they're just showing too much. They don't have anything to show left that isn't already shown. So the vibe of E3 is definitely changing than what it used to be. Alright, now into the big conferences. I'm going to talk about 4 of them kind of in a little more detail and then group everybody else into one big subcategory just because some of them I feel like didn't really have anything good to show. Or not good, but didn't interest me. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Xbox Showcase, the Xbox Bethesda Showcase. Overall, it was probably the best one in my opinion. I am an Xbox fan. I do play daily on Xbox compared to only playing sometimes on my PlayStation and Switch. Overall, it was a good conference. They had some really interesting games coming through. That game Party Animals looks stupid funny. And Halo looks good. It looks like maybe they saved Halo a bit. At least the multiplayer side looks good. Having Jason Statham back definitely has to help kind of build out that franchise and get it back to where it needs to be, because Halo really has fallen off from where it was. The biggest news of the Xbox conference, I guess, has to be Starfield. Starfield's one of the bigger RPG titles coming out, role-playing game title that's coming out in 2022 now. They gave a release date November 11th of 2022, but it's exclusive to Xbox. It is going to be an Xbox and PC only game. That may anger some PlayStation fans. In my opinion, I think it's the right move for Xbox. But that was their big reveal, and they opened the show with it, so that was a really neat thing to do. The next conference I'm going to talk about is the Ubisoft conference. It was more the same stuff for them. All their games have generally had the same look and feel for a while now, and they've kept that moving. They showed off the new Rainbow Six game, Rainbow Six Extraction. That looks pretty good. They have the new Far Cry 6, and a new extreme sports game, Riders Republic. That one didn't interest me very much, but that's somebody's cup of tea, so it's out there if you're looking for it. The most captivating part of their conference for me was the Far Cry 6 trailer with Giancarlo Esposito. He's going to play the main villain. You may know him from Breaking Bad and some other shows, but his delivery on that was awesome. And for a game that's known for epic villains and epic monologues, he really is delivering it on that end. Alright, the next one up was Square Enix. Their conference was actually above par for what they normally do. It was actually pretty good. Their conferences in the past used to be pretty word-heavy, talky conferences where the people would just come out on stage and dump a bunch of information on you, and then they would show some gameplay or a trailer of some kind. This year it was back-to-back-to-back. A pretty cool announcement out of that was the Final Fantasy Pixel launch. It's remastered the first 6 Final Fantasy games. Just to drop it that it's on mobile and PC only, and isn't coming to an actual video game console, at least for the foreseeable future. Crushed the hopes and dreams of everybody looking for that game. And those games particularly, there's been a pretty big call to get those on console lately. The big note for me would be the Guardians of the Galaxy game. That game looks really cool, but I am skeptical about it because of the treatment of the Avengers game a couple of years ago. But as far as I know, the 15 minutes of gameplay they showed, it looks pretty promising, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye out when that comes out in October. The last big one I'm going to talk about is going to be Nintendo. Nintendo always kind of does their own thing. They invented this treehouse style, these short clips introduced by a narrator style conference a couple of years ago now, and they've stuck with it, and now everybody else is kind of coming up to them in that end of the presentation. So it was more Nintendo overall, a lot of big exclusives for their big titles, and some really cool looking gameplay. But if you're not into Nintendo games, if you're not into Mario and not into Zelda, you're not into Metroid, all of those things, then they're really not going to interest you very well. But I thought it was pretty good. Alright, now for everybody else, that's the Devolver Showcase, the PC Gaming Showcase, Future Game Showcase, Indie Showcase, the Capcom Showcase, everybody else that was there that they brought something to the table, but not everything was like, oh my. Not technically E3, but Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest was the first night. Technically, it was the day before E3. And they dropped the Elden Ring trailer. Elden Ring's going to be the next Souls-like game. So if you like getting brutalized for no reason, would definitely give that a look. It looked pretty cool. But those games are not for me. Not in my wheelhouse in any other way. There was also a bunch of Netflix shows announced in the, Netflix Geek Week is what they called it. So video game-based Netflix shows, including the next season of The Witcher, the next season of their Castlevania animated show, a couple of other things. So if those interest you, you can go check those out over there. One thing that annoyed me to death about all these conferences was Monster Hunter Stories 2 was everywhere. I mean, it was at Nintendo, it was at Xbox, it was at Summer Games Fest, everywhere. And I could care less about that game and anything that it's doing. And I was sick of seeing those commercials every time. It was just, they paid for their marketing, and they definitely got it, but I really, really got sick of seeing it by the end. The last thing I wanted to note out of all of these other conferences was this game called BPM. It's already on Steam, so it's already on PC, but it does have a console launch coming up. That game looks really fun if you're into the way that the new Doom works, the kind of in-your-face action, just keep shooting kind of games. That game kind of looks like a mix of that and a rhythm game, so if that is something that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check that out as well. Alright, now let's talk about some games that I personally liked. I made up some random categories that really don't mean anything, just so I can talk about the few specific games that I saw that really caught my eye. The first category is games I'm excited for, or a game I'm excited for that actually has a release date. That's going to be the Guardians of the Galaxy game by Square Enix that I talked about earlier. It comes out on October 26th. It's a third-person action game. It looks similar enough to the movies that came out in recent years that you can tell who these characters are, but different enough that it doesn't look like it's trying to tell the same story. So that is good. One of the negatives that I saw in the trailer, though, is that you can only play as Star-Lord. That's kind of annoying, because playing as Groot would seem really fun, or Drax or Rocket, any of the other characters, would be pretty cool, but I know they need to keep it grounded because it's a choice-based game, and the game's going to recognize your choices that you make, so they need to keep those to one character, and they just happen to choose Star-Lord for that. The other thing in that trailer that really bothered me is Drax overall is so awkward. He is cringy weird, and it really was starting to get on my nerves by the end of that. Just the random things he would say that really just were way out in left field. It wasn't funny like it is in the movies, it was just awkward. The next one is a game I'm excited for, but may never come out because who knows what will happen. Video game production now is in a weird space, but we'll see what goes on. That's the Outer Worlds 2. They had one of the funniest trailers I've probably ever seen, where they just made fun of video game trailers to begin with. That was awesome. But hopefully we'll see if it comes out. The first one was pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot, and hopefully the second one's better. But we'll see what happens with that game. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game that I could absolutely care less about that other people are excited for, and that's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Though the first game was dreadful to me. I've tried to play it probably 6 times, and I just cannot get into it. The breaking weapons and everything about it, it just wasn't for me. So to have a sequel to that game really didn't do anything. I know that's a major franchise to people, but for me, I'm definitely going to have to pass on that. The next game I'm going to talk about is going to be the best shooter that I saw at the conference. That has to be Back 4 Blood. It could have been Halo. But we just haven't seen enough of Halo to really make that call, so I chose Back 4 Blood. It comes out on October 12th. It's on Game Pass. It's the spiritual successor to the Left 4 Dead series. Left 4 Dead was one of those games that I put a stupid amount of hours into when it came out on the Xbox 360, so I'm happy to have it back, even if it's not in the same way. It's a new revised version, so I hope it's amazing. The next game I want to talk about is the best party game, is what I'm going to put it. It's technically a fighting game, but that is Party Animals. That game looks hilarious. The physics-based fighting games are always funny to me. I don't know why. They just make me chuckle the whole time playing them. I love Gang Beasts. That's kind of what it looks like, but with animals instead of just these amorphous blobs. And you actually have weapons, like I saw a crossbow in their trailer, so that looks really fun. It doesn't have a release date yet, but I'll sit on that one until it comes out. That game just looks so funny. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game that I'm interested in, I'm excited for, that I know I won't play. That's going to be Shin Megami Tensei 5. That's the series that spawned the Persona games. I've played Persona a couple of times, Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5, and their battle system is really cool. I love the battle system. The grind of merging your I guess monsters is the best way to put it, together to create more powerful ones. That's always really fun, but as far as the stories of those games, they are just dreadful to me. I cannot get through them. I've tried multiple times, but I'll be a fan of that game from the sidelines. It actually comes out on my birthday, November 12th, so I'm looking forward to it, but I am just not going to play it. I just want to give a quick shout out to Game Pass. There was a lot of Game Pass announcements during the Xbox Bethesda event. Pretty much every game on there was shown to be on Game Pass besides a few. They have this big slogan, 6 big games over the next 6 months. But one of the games I saw that was coming that I'm really excited for is Hades. Games won a bunch of awards as kind of like a critical darling in the industry. So I'm definitely going to give that a look when it comes over to console and it comes to Game Pass. The last game I wanted to talk about is kind of my sleeper hit, a game that may be good. I'm hoping it's good, but probably won't get the attention it deserves. It's Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. The first one was super fun, entertaining. It's kind of a XCOM style tactical game. XCOM is another amazing series that doesn't get the love it should, but it's just so enjoyable using these characters, these silly, wacky little Rabbids, the Mario characters we love, but in this really intense tactical combat. So much fun. So the second one, from what they showed gameplay-wise, right up the same alley, maybe a little more in-depth, and definitely looking forward to that. Alright, so that's it. That's my E3 coverage. That's what I'm excited for, what I thought of the conferences. Pretty short, pretty sweet. I know I didn't cover everything, so if there was a game that you saw, something that you liked or didn't like, that I didn't cover, let me know down in the comments what you think. And as always, the like, subscribe, share, comment, everything, all that normal jazz. And I'll see you guys next time.